Okay, let's see if we can do a quick card experiment. I'm always interested in seeing what can be done in this time frame these days. I think I need to re-ink this pad or something. It looks really dry on the stamp for some reason. You ever notice that with some stamps? It's like you keep inking it up thinking there's nothing on there. And there really is, but it's really difficult to tell. Well, let's see if there is ink on that pad or not. I don't recall stamping it out and it being kind of dry, so let's see how it goes. I probably ink up my pads maybe once every... It's not very often. It might be once every, I don't know, month maybe or so, something like that. Alright. It's a really light impression for some reason. Maybe it does need to be re-inked, but I think it'll serve its purpose for now. Alright, so I am going for a quick composition, and I want some brilliant looking sky formations. And one of the things that I always want to get, because I'm not really good at it, is this real kind of free-form kind of expression, you know, kind of akin to, this is maple pear, by the way, I'm bringing in some extra trees in here. I like that real kind of spontaneous look of watercolors and whatnot, you know. I'm not really into the, you know, the impressionists and those types of paintings. I like them, but, you know, I tend to be more of like a technical illustrator, you know, really a lot of fine, tight detail, as you can imagine, you know, maybe looking at the stamps. So I'm always kind of really admire a lot of those different types of artists that are like calligraphers, you know, and watercolor sketch artists and whatnot. Sometimes I like the studies for certain types of famous paintings more than I do the final pieces, just because the kind of free-flowing nature of them and that real spontaneous feel. Okay, so let's see here. Let me try this blueprint sketch here. It's one of the distressings. And let's see here. Paris Dusk. Let me try some of this ink. I just got these re-inkers, so I'm not real familiar with some of the colors. So it's like doing a lot of experimentation. Okay, here's the Paris Dusk. Okay, I'm going to just go for the swatchy looking background, okay. Okay, see there's kind of that texture starting to develop in there. That's one of the things that I found when using some of these re-inker inks. I do really like that look. Now, I don't know, if you're using Memento pads, I don't know, you don't get that. It's because you know, there's not enough ink on there to do that, but in this one, in this case, with the 3 inkers, I'm really bad at this. You know, Van Gogh, Starry, Starry Night. But look at that separation that's happening there. Isn't that really cool? It's almost like that salt. I don't know. If you're a watercolorist, help me. I don't know what that technique is called, where you add salt to you know, your canvas, or you know, and I think you do the washes right over the top of it, and it gives you that you know, that real separated looking feel to the surface. It's really cool. Now, I'll work this bottom portion down here. Okay, so needless to say, this is going to be a nighttime scene, so let's start hitting this with some, alright, in this quick card format. I should have had all my pads out. I didn't exactly know where it was going though, because there's so much, I don't know, there's craziness that happens up there. So, let's start hitting this area down here. This is a summer sky. Oh yeah, I re-inked this one. Good. That one was really getting dry on me. Kind of hitting some areas around here. I like to leave my road formations fairly light, but I don't want it perfectly white or something like this. This looks like it's going to be a really deep night sky. Okay. So we'll color in most of this scene with this summer sky. And then when we start moving up into some of our darker tones, we will refrain from total coverage. Okay? So anyway, but I do want to have a strong visual lead-in involving this road, so we'll kind of make the flora, in terms of the grass and ground cover and whatnot, fairly dark in comparison to that the road itself. Okay. All right, I can bring some of this up here too. Ideally, I would let it dry a little bit more before applying this, but let's just get it right on in there. In the spirit of expedient creations here. Okay, so at the base of my trees, I always like to add a little bit more tone. What I'm saying in terms of the value underneath the trees being dark, I'm saying that the trees are casting shadows, okay? So maybe at the top of the trees, you leave them a little bit lighter, and towards the bottom you make them a little bit darker because, maybe light isn't reaching those as much. On vertical sides of buildings, the walls, I usually like to make them a little bit darker than the rooftop if something is being top lit, okay? So it kind of turns the objects in space a little bit, and not physically, but kind of visually when I say that. And it makes them look a little bit more three-dimensional by coloring the different sides a different value. You can color them the same color, but just make certain sides a little bit darker than others, and you'll be good. Just don't do things all uniformly. Vary it a little bit, okay? And it will serve you very well, that variation. Okay, that is that. Let's try the Memento Bahama Blue. Start to move into the mid-tone blues right here. Hitting this along the road, side of the building. You can tilt your applicator, whatever type you're using. I'm using Color Box Stylus tool here. Okay, can you see the lighting scheme starting to develop a little bit? I'm kind of oscillating my light and dark, just slightly right now. It's nothing extreme. Okay, what I mean by oscillating, it means I'm leaving some areas light and applying the color right now. I hesitate to call it dark, but it is darker than what I've applied previously, okay? But it's done in an incremental fashion, okay? Alright, so these cards that are kind of more monochromatic, speeds things along a little bit, especially at nighttime types of situations. You wouldn't have a large kind of range of hue showing, it would be, kind of a... It would be a very limited range of hue that's visible, okay? It would be more values that you're kind of witnessing in that light. You know, that moonlight reflecting off things. That cool, very cool light. Because the moonlight itself is already reflected light, right? It's reflecting the sun's light. Okay, so see that right there? Maybe make that covered bridge stand out a little bit more by turning the trees behind the bridge a little bit darker. So you're using contrasts here to emphasize certain things. So right there, it's kind of coming around a little bit, huh? These quick cards are good because I'm starting to run out of original pieces, and I need to restock because I've been sending them out with all orders, finding homes for my my originals. If you happen to have received any of those, or one of them, I hope you enjoy them. And that's better than I figured sitting in a pile next to my desk here. Okay, so adding some more here. It's kind of weird. I'm kind of having to do this, but I want to vary things, but I don't want to make it too dark. I still want to have, you know, some lights and darks within this space. So I'm just being careful not to put this everywhere, but I want to put enough because I want it to be fairly dark down there on the landscape. Okay, see that kind of coming around? We see somewhat of our lighting scheme. It's looking a little anemic up there, even though there is a lot of ink that's been applied up there. You can use a little bit more of a lot of things in terms of intensity, value. I don't know if I'll do temperature up there. I could hit it with a little bit of a warmer blue maybe, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, this is a Prussian blue. It's very, very dark. And it's kind of, as I say in some of my other videos, it's kind of my last step before I get all the way back to black, which I am right here. Okay, so usually I like to use whatever tone I have stamped out my main imagery in, or my darkest imagery, whatever that might be. I like to also use that same color in some degree, maybe not solid black, but maybe just dabbing it around and kind of creating some gray tones with it throughout the scene, and I think that works as a really nice binder to bring everything together. Okay, looking pretty good. It's looking really kind of so a lot of the things, objects in that area right there are looking a little bit obscure, okay? And which is fine, and everything is fairly soft, but what we'll do is we're going to be introducing some really crisp elements back into it. Okay, so I have a lot of blues down there. This is basically like was it one or two blues? I think it was two. So you can see the difference. Look how bright that is down there, and look how that is. This is really rich with texture, but it's not real rich with intense, vibrant saturations, okay? So let's go into it and add what I know to be a very bright element into it, and that's the number 10 Marvy blue, okay? So let's see what this can do up here and see if we can increase its intensity. Okay, so we got the really great texture from that Memento application, but here, let me do this on half of it and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay. See, I'll do it on one side and leave the other side out. So see that intensity right there, and look at this side. It's kind of, I kind of like that amorphic. Maybe I'll put it in some areas and kind of leave it as is in other areas. I'll bring some of this blue down here. Maybe a little bit up here in the corner. Look at that intensity. Ah, okay. That looks pretty cool. To me, it is. I don't know if it is or not. Bringing some of this blue down in the landscape as well, kind of brightening it up, kind of giving a little bit more excitement to that terrain down below. Some of this deep blue, bright, very bright saturations. Okay, maybe a little bit more out here. Really love that intensity. Okay. Do you see the benefit of having that really bright tone just laid in there? It could have been underneath it too. Well, actually, I don't know if it would have done that separation type of effect up there had I already laid that color down. Maybe, maybe not, I'm not sure. Okay, so let's do a couple things before we add on to this. Okay, this is the tiny rocks. I just want to go for some, as I was saying, I was going to bring some crisp impressions back into this mix, okay? So there's some rocks, and that tiny rocks that kind of focus. See how that kind of carries that out right there? All right. And let's do this. I've been doing this today. All right, where did my all-important, here we go, toothbrush go? That really lends itself to this kind of splatter painting type of technique because of the that varied type of surface down there. Would be perfect for this splatter painting type of application, don't you think? Alright, I don't know if I've mixed this up enough. It kind of reconstitute it, so I'll have a bit of a really thin application of this and not real controlled. Okay, so let's see which way this is going. I'm seeing which way this is splattering. Sometimes I do this at the conventions, and people that are, you know, 5 feet for me kind of back up. I'm thinking, it's not going to splatter that far, you know. It's kind of funny. Okay, trying to keep it up in the sky primarily. Maybe I can mask some of this off here. I'll mask some of this off down here. There we go. Kind of. There we go. What a fun technique. Alright, so we've got that. The stars up in the sky there. Right? So let's go back in and add in our effects to the scene. By that I mean some little detailed areas. Okay, in these trees there's these little tufts on here that are illuminated. They're top lit, okay? And I can't really see that anymore because I have gone in and colored all those trees in. So what I'm doing is I'm just reintroducing that top lit aspect to these by putting in a few little dots right on the top sides of those branches or whatever, tufts and those leaves, for lack of a better word. I don't know what you would call it. The top surfaces of these little clusters, branch clusters maybe. Maybe this won't be a quick card, but it'll be much quicker than some of my cards in the past. Bring some of it down in this meadow on the top surfaces of some of those sedge filler textures. You bring it on the road, and this could represent, I don't know, just reflected light from the stars. And I guess in this case, we have little textures in our tops of our rocks down here in the water, and I can just reintroduce that illumination to them. Make those rocks seem a little bit more dimensional. So if this is water down here, maybe there's little reflections on the water's surface. Okay. And of course, we have our main star of the scene, which is this covered bridge, and maybe I can put a few little highlights right along the top rooftop, or I have some slats that are on the roof, and maybe I'll just reiterate those a little bit. Let's see if we can show you that. So along that rooftop edge, you see those rocks down there? In the meadow, grass, and on those tree tops there. You can see that textury is that even a word? That textured sky. Okay. Okay, now this little fence here, I'm going to bring that back out just to emphasize it a little bit. I think we've gone past. Alright, so this isn't a quick card, but I'm almost done. It's not too far. Okay, so we have all those little white dots up there, okay? It's a blue color scheme, right? Let's bring in an element of that blue. Let's get rid of this piece of paper. It's so textured with that Dr. Martin's bleed proof on there, okay? And let's bring in some of these colored dots as well, okay? So we have kind of, you know, real kind of random, semi-random application of splatter paint. It's really hard to control that. I mean, I can get it where I want it to go for the most part, but you know, how much comes out and what size clump, I just don't do it enough to really get a feel for it. And if I've done a bunch of them, I don't, you know, it's not over like every day, so. And the fact that I just don't clean off that brush doesn't help either often enough. Alright, so I've applied some of these blue dots down here. They kind of really blend in though, don't they? Which is what I kind of want them to do anyways. Okay, there's a greenish kind of tinge in here in some areas. It's there's kind of a warmish glow, so let's put some of these green dots up here as well. Okay. So I'll put a little green up here. Maybe it just kind of looks that way because that light blue is so bright a blue. Over the top of this, it's ending up being, you know, fairly dark, but brightness is a matter of intensity, okay? It can be very dark and very bright. It's just not very light. And for those of you who have watched a lot of these videos, sorry for repeating myself a gazillion times. Okay, here's purple right here. See that purplish tinge in there? Why not? Stardust. Oh, alright, since I am not racing the clock, a little bit, but not too, you know, as much, let's use this little alcohol pen to put a little bit of shade underneath that Eve right there, and I'll do a little coloring on some of these slats, you know, giving it some of them. They're not all going to have the same tone. I guess if the place was painted, yeah, but I can color the inside of this covered bridge with some darker tones of blue. It's not real dark, it's still fairly light, but I can, you know, color exactly where I want it to go with this fine tipped pen like this, okay? Hit some of these bricks underneath the bridge on one side of the brick. So, we have a little bit of variation. These were alcohol pens by both Marvy and Shuttle Art. Look at that textured sky up there. It's looking a little bit busy, but so be it. Okay, now, if I don't find it immediately, I will pause the video. I want some leaves. I need to pause the video. Okay, I didn't pause it for too long. It was just all these stamps buried right underneath all of these things right around me. I've been driven to stamp lately. It's one of those things, the more you stamp, kind of the more, I don't know, crazed you get with it, because as soon as we get one thing done, it seems to open up, I don't know, when you answer one question or whatever, okay, and I'm talking about in terms of doing some sort of composition or technique, it seems to branch off, you know, into a bunch of different areas where, oh, I want to try that technique with this scene and this stamp and this color or whatever, and or I want to do that one, and you do it with a combination of different techniques and color schemes and everything, you know, the whole thing goes up exponentially. Okay, adding in some dark, really dark foreground here, and I'm finding this VersaFine really does the job at stamping over just about anything that I've stamped down, no matter what it is. In terms of, you know, texture, like the Dr. Martens, bleed proof white, those little white specks are kind of like raised, little chalky little bumps almost. And this VersaFine ink is just so thick, it really sits on the surface of your piece beautifully. And, you know, it gives me the option of really, you know, stamping right over something, just right, covering it up Okay, so I could stamp it right up there, and I don't see, in other words, those little white dots showing through the leaves, which I do not want. Okay, these are the reeds right down here. Let me see if I can go for another impression of that. The road's coming this way, so I'll put another one right here anyway. So the road goes like that, in front of these reeds or something like that. Okay, so here we go. Look at how that black stands out so beautifully, huh? Yeah, maybe I should have done some color box work on here first before I went in with that versifying. Okay, so that will limit me, maybe. Okay, I don't want to add too much to this stuff still. Well, this isn't a quick card anymore. I don't want to make it a marathon card. Okay, so a little bit of white pigment ink here, and everything's looking a little bit frosty, so I really like that, but let's emphasize that a little bit more with some additional kind of mist and reflected starlight coming off of moisture in the air. Alright, now I can't touch anything around those versifying impressions because it is really, really wet. Juicy, okay? So here's a little bit of fog back here, and I usually hit this. I'm being really careful around those reeds. I usually hit it in the areas where light meets dark, okay? Because the lighter area, that stands to reason, that's where we'd see kind of this illuminated mist, right? Because you wouldn't, if no light is in a certain area, it means that there's no light to illuminate that moisture in the air. So kind of use it in those areas where light meets dark. Where light meets light, you can't even see it because it's white against, so light of a value usually. So you have to kind of put it where light meets dark to be the most effective. Alright, so you can see that down in here. It's a little bit over here. It stands out a little bit too much right here, but pigment ink dries much, much darker than what it looks like when freshly applied, so it'll kind of mellow that out a little bit, or should. Putting some up here in the trees. And let's see if I can hit some around a couple of these stars up here, these dots that are a little bit bigger. Oops, that's way too much here. Let me remove. This is me removing ink. My finger like that. That's my technique. Okay, let's add it more exacting. Okay, so here we go. There's little glowing little stars up there. It's not real amorphic up there, like a watercolorist would easily do, which I am not. Okay, am I focused in here? Alright, here we go. So anyways, okay, so there are those stars and that inherent kind of bleached out look that's going on in the background. It's pretty, I don't know, it's more amorphic than I usually get, not doing that kind of that re-inker kind of memento whatever separation that's happening. There's a covered bridge. Okay, rooftop remains light, and the road especially. Okay, I've left a little bit of this water down here light, and a little area out here, but you see this where I'm kind of separating the road so that it creates this visual lead into the background. Top surfaces of things, rooftops usually, a little bit lighter. Put your lightest tone up there, but bring your medium and darker tones on the side. And then we've just reiterated that with a little bit of white gel pen ink. So anyways, putting some branches up here really makes, that area in the background seem much lighter by contrast. Before I did that, this area up here looked pretty dark, right? But then when you put something so dark, you know, right over the front of it, that looks, you know, really light by contrast. And that's like a blue like that blue. This really looks dark against this white, right? But against that blue, I mean black, you know, by relation, it looks pretty light. So anyways, that's how you kind of play around with your values in pushing and pulling distance. Darker things seem much closer to us, you know? And that's how you can make certain areas pop a little bit, by putting something just a little bit darker next to it. Look how that road really stands out and makes it look really light. But before those were on there, you know, I mean, it is what it is, but you put that right next to it and it really makes it pop out. Okay, so, you know, not too long of a scene to do, and kind of fun to do. We applied a different technique in there with that kind of re-inker, Memento Re-inker ink, I don't know, separation methodology to it. So, hope you enjoyed the card. Thanks as always for tuning in to the channel. I really appreciate you watching the scene being made and taking a little time to stamp with me. All right, thanks a lot.